June 19th, 2017, 6 o'clock. I'm calling the meeting to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Ford,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Bullock, Councilmember Amador,
Present.
Councilmember Teeter,
Here.
Councilmember Carson,
Present.
Councilmember Diaz, Councilmember McEldowney, Councilmember Elliott, Councilmember Douglas. 1, 2, 3, 4. I see 1, 2, 3, 5. You have a quorum.
Thank you. For the record, we know that Councilman Diaz, Councilman Douglas, and Councilwoman Elliott will not be here this evening. We will make it clear on the record when the Mayor Pro Tem does show up. I'm looking for a motion to excuse the other three. Councilwoman Carson. Mr. Teeter.
Second.
A motion is second to excuse the three council members that will be absent from the meeting this evening. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion's carried. Now our next item would be to go into an executive session. I'm open for a motion to enter into an executive session pursuant to CRS 24-6-402, Parents 4, Parents E, of the Open Meetings Law for the purpose of determining positions, developing strategy, and instructing negotiators relating to the funding of a public parking lot in the Derby neighborhood. Mr. McEldowney.
So moved.
Mr. Teeter.
Second.
I have a motion is second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion is carried. For the record, Mayor Pro Tem Bullock is now with us, and we are now in an executive session. For the audience, we're expecting a half an hour, maybe 40 minutes, and then we'll be back to our regular meeting. Patience. I'm calling the meeting back to order. Next item on the agenda is the moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. If everybody will stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, now I'd ask the staff to pass the microphone around and allow everybody to introduce themselves.
Betty Thomas.
Danny Thomas.
Bench.
Thank you.
Tim Moore, Recreation.
Lisa Nordholt, Recreation.
Brogan Cheevers, Recreation.
Josh Polgar, Recreation.
Zach Roth, Recreation.
Vicky Masters, Recreation.
Misty Gowdy, Recreation.
Glenn Batista, Recreation.
Mike Brown, Parks, Recreation, and Golf.
Karen O'Donnell, Parks, Recreation, and Golf.
Kathy Blakeman, Human Resources.
John Aguilar, Denver Post.
David Gopris. David Martinez.
Susan Martinez.
Dennis Moon, Police Department.
Brandon Geyer, Citizen. Mike Bernstein, Builder.
Faustino Fernandez.
Jessica Scardina.
Andrew Pahaley, Public Works.
Maria DeAndre, Public Works.
Earl Hood.
Christopher.
Chris Hood.
All right, thank you all for being here. Our first item on the agenda is proclamations and recognitions. And today we have a proclamation for the Day of Play and Parks and Recreation Month proclamation. I'd like to invite the Director of Parks and Recreation, Carolyn Keith, to the podium. Why don't you come on up? And I'd like to ask the City Attorney to read the proclamation.
Whereas play is a valuable part of a child's healthy development and is a crucial factor in the overall well-being of children as well as people of all ages, and whereas parks and recreation programs are an integral part of communities throughout this country, including Commerce City, and whereas children who play do better in school and develop cognitive skills that are linked to learning and academic performance, and whereas our parks and recreation programs build healthy, active communities that aid in the prevention of chronic disease, provide therapeutic recreation services for individuals with disabilities, and also improve the mental and emotional health of all citizens. And whereas the City of Commerce City acknowledges children are one of our most important resources, therefore we must ensure safe and accessible play spaces for all children. And whereas the city promotes children as well as people of all ages spending time outside at parks, trails, and playgrounds with family and friends, and whereas the U.S. House of Representatives has designated July as Parks and Recreation Month, and whereas the City of Commerce City will join Playful Cities USA in celebrating Play Day by hosting a free family fun zone at the annual Fourth Fest celebration July 4th at Dick's Sporting Goods Park, now therefore be it resolved that I, on behalf of the City Council, hereby proclaim Tuesday, July 4th, 2017, as a day of play in the City of Commerce City, and that July is recognized as Parks and Recreation Month in the City of Commerce City, and encourage all citizens to share the individual benefits that come from parks and recreation.
Thank you. I'm open for a motion. Mr. McEldowney.
I move to approve the proclamation.
Thank you. Mr. Amador.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the proclamation as read. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion is carried. I'd like to ask Karen if there's anything she'd like to add from the Parks and Recreation side.
Sure, I'd just like to encourage all of you and all of our citizens to come join us in our Day of Play, Fourth Fest. It's July 4th at Dick's Sporting Goods Park, and it's always a fun event. And we have a lot of staff here to join in our photo with you today, and just thank you all for your continued support.
Great. Thank you, Karen. We can get the Parks and Rec staff that are here to come up front for a photo opportunity, and we'll give you this proclamation. Thank you all for everything you do for our community. All right, next item on our agenda, citizen communication. And tonight, nobody signed up on our public comment roster, but I'm going to ask, is there anybody in the audience who wants to take advantage of the citizen communication portion of this meeting? Seeing none, we're going to move forward into the consent agenda. The consent agenda includes items that are routine, procedural, informational, self-explanatory, and non-controversial. They are presented to council for a single motion and vote. Any member of council may ask to remove a specific item for further discussion and a separate vote. Tonight there are 2 items listed under the consent agenda. Does anyone on council wish to remove any item off the agenda for further discussion? Seeing not, if not, then I need a motion to approve the consent agenda. Mr. Bullitt?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Mr. McEldowney?
Second.
A motion and a second. Will the city attorney please read the titles of the consent agenda?
Resolution 2017-52, resolution authorizing award of contract for Sand Creek open space remediation and restoration to Concrete Express, Inc. Resolution 2017-55, resolution approving funding agreement with the State of Colorado Department of Natural Resources relating to the Colorado Natural Resources Foundation Fund.
Thank you. Title's been read,
Did you get
and
the other
the
one?
motion and second.
Did you get both?
I need a roll call vote, please. For the record, 6 in favor of the consent agenda, and it is approved. The others are all absent. All right, we'll move into public hearing portion of our meeting. We have ordinance Z-932-17. I'm going to go ahead and open that public hearing and invite the staff forward to make the presentation.
Good evening, council members, mayor, and council members. Appreciate your time this evening. Robin Kearns with the Planning Department. Here to present case Z 932-17 is for a zone change for property at 10,000 20 Havana Street. Applicant is AP Caissons LLC. Our vicinity map shows the location of the property into the larger context, the surrounding Commerce City area. And the future land use plan from our comprehensive plan showing the property designated as industrial distribution by the purple color. An aerial of the property shows its current configuration and status, which is essentially a vacant property here by the O'Brien Canal to the north. The property was originally built with a approximately 800 square foot house in 1963, and that house was deconstructed or demolished in 2011, all by permit. Looking at the property, it's a relatively flat lot except for the north side along the canal where the canal bank berm is, and then you can see the existing driveway and access point. The history is it has the property annexed in 2007 and zoned in right thereafter in 2008, and it was zoned agricultural. The applicant is requesting two items of the city: a zone change, as we're discussing tonight, which has been reviewed by the Planning Commission and is now in front of the City Council tonight. And they've also submitted a development plan, but that is still currently under review by staff. The case 93217 is a proposal to change from the existing zoning of agricultural to the proposed zoning of industrial 2 or I2. And this would allow the property to be developed and used for industrial purposes. A component brought from the development plan is their concept, which shows the existing access point off Havana, steel building for working on their vehicles and the like, and an office, some storage area in the rear that'd be fenced, and retention pond to the north. The company is like a drilling, caissons and sort of type company. It would be approximately 5,000 square feet of building, and they would have approximately 10 to 15 employees. Regarding referral agency comments, we have received no objections regarding this zone change proposal. There is a note that FRICO has expressed concerns regarding the drainage in proximity to the O'Brien Canal, and that is still being addressed through the development plan case review. The Planning Commission analysis shows the proposed I2 zoning is appropriate for the neighborhood. The property is identified as industrial distribution by our future land use plan. It meets our minimum lot size, and it's located along a major collector, which is Havana Street. It is also located in the northern industrial enclave area, which is essentially the area south of 104th, north of 96th, and west of Highway 2. Some of the surrounding development is mostly all industrial. Cass Transport, the Mountain View Industrial Park, and the Kirchhoff PUD are all industrial I1 and 2 zoning uses and developments. The only remaining other ag parcel is the one directly to the south, and then there is a city park site to the north and north of the O'Brien Canal. Regarding the zone change criteria from our land development code, it's found that this application meets all 6 applicable criteria. And as of today, staff has received no responses to public notice. On May 2nd, 2017, Planning Commission held a public hearing and voted 5-0 in favor of recommending an approval to City Council regarding this request. So that is the end of my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions, and we do have the applicant here as well to answer any questions.
Thank you, Robin. Does the council have any questions of the staff at this time? Mr. McElhenney?
Thank you. In looking at the Planning Commission minutes, I know you mentioned that there were no concerns raised in regard to public comment, but there is a comment in the notes from the Planning Commission meeting that reflects somebody expressing opposition to this request. Has that opposition to the request been resolved, or did the comments cease at that meeting? No further indication of concern?
There was concern about, well, it was more questions of access, and there's not a lot of opportunity to provide different access. There was concern by somebody from the public who thought that the neighbor would have concern, but they have not expressed any concern.
Okay.
And I think it had to do about confusion about access points, and the concern came from then a property 2 doors, if you will, to the south. It's a vacant lot, but when the gentleman was basically saying that when he develops his property, it'll affect the access point for the property just to the south of this one, and he was just trying to make sure people were aware of that.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Sure.
Any others? Seeing none, I'd ask that the applicant come forward if he has anything or she has anything to add to the presentation by our staff. Good evening, sir. No, I don't have anything to add. Okay, it's important you come up anyway because I want to ask the council if they have any questions for the applicant at this time. No? And Mr. Amador?
Just for clarity, the nature of the business is for concrete drilling, caissons, that nature?
Well, it's not concrete drilling, it's caisson drilling.
Caissons.
Yeah, we just, it'll just be our trucks parked there, and the building will be just for light maintenance for the trucks.
Very good, thank you.
Seeing no other questions, thank you, sir, for coming in this evening. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to come forward and address the City Council on this matter? Seeing no one, I'm going to go ahead and close that public hearing. I ask for a motion and a second to approve the findings and recommendations of the Planning Commission. Mr. McEldowney.
Thank you, sir. I would move to approve and accept the findings and recommendations of the Planning Commission.
Thank you. Mr. Teeter.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second to accept the findings and recommendations of the Planning Commission. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion is carried. Now I'm open for a motion and a second to introduce Ordinance Z 93217 by council as seated. Mr. Bullock.
Move to introduce Z 932-17 on first reading. Council is seated.
Mr. McEldowney. Second. I have a motion and a second. Will the city attorney please read the title?
Ordinance Z-932-17, an ordinance rezoning from Ag to I-2, the property described in Exhibit A attached here to and made a part hereof, located at 10020 Havana Street, Commerce City, Colorado, and amending the zoning map of the City of Commerce City, Colorado to reflect said rezoning.
Thank you. I'll ask for a roll call vote. For the record, 6 in favor, 3 excused absences. Now we move on to ordinances on first reading. We start with Ordinance 2127. Is there anyone on council who has any questions regarding this ordinance? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to come forward and address the council on this ordinance? Seeing no one, I'm open for a motion and a second to introduce Ordinance 2127 by council as seated. Mr. Bullock.
Move to introduce Ordinance 2127 on first reading. Council is seated.
Mr. Teeter.
Second.
A motion and a second. City Attorney, please read the title.
Ordinance 2127, an ordinance amending Section 21-5214 of the City of Commerce City Land Development Code by removing the separation requirement between liquor stores, taverns, beer and wine businesses, absent a use by permit.
Thank you. I'll ask for a roll call vote. For the record, 6 in favor, 3 excused absences. Move on to Ordinance 2131. Does anyone on council have any questions regarding this ordinance? Seeing none, is there anyone in the audience who would like to come forward and address council on this ordinance? Seeing no one, I'm open for a motion and a second to introduce ordinance 2131 by council as seated. Mr. Teeter.
Move to approve ordinance 2131, council seated, first reading.
All right. Mr. McEldowney.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. I ask for discussion before I have the city attorney read the title and ask for the vote. The only discussion I had is, we've had several study sessions concerning distance from schools, and my only concern has been primarily liquor stores and bars from schools, and I still would like to see a minimum setback from an elementary school to a bar or to a liquor store, just because I want to make sure that the children in our community are safe and not unintentionally influenced by having this next door to their school. So with that said, I will be voting no on this particular motion and second. Is there any other discussion? Mr. McEldowney?
I respect the comments of the mayor. I would just note that in the study sessions that you referenced, and looking at our closest neighbors and effectively competitors in the market for new establishments that our citizens are seeking, this essentially puts us on par with those neighbors. The process allows for site-by-site dialogue, and so I think the key here is we don't even get to have the conversation under the current rules that are in place because sites just don't align. We can look at the example of Victory Prep right across the street. Many sites that would be ideal locations that would be supportive of businesses in the area for happy hour crowds or for event activity at Dick's Sporting Goods Park, but we won't see likely develop given the fact that the current buffer effectively rules those sites out of said development. So I'll be supporting this this effort tonight.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Mr. Teeter?
Yes, I agree with Councilman McEldowney. I also believe this is another step for us to bring the much-needed sit-down restaurants that we all desire. We hear all the time about why can't we get a sit-down restaurant with some kind of liquor involved, and this will help move this forward, and I'll be voting for it.
Mr. Amador?
I'm conflicted in where we are with this ordinance because we do have the Northern Range is being hamstringed by having these setbacks of sit-down restaurants with their liquor licenses. And so on one hand, it's fair to say that, yes, I would like to see Texas Roadhouse with their liquor license and maybe Old Chicago's or something else right next door. However, the ordinance as written also indicates that from the existing Adams City High School, we have an existing site that could have a liquor license, and so we're right next door to an educational facility. So for me, it's one of those decisions where you look at it and you say, what is the best use of liquor licensing? And I'm torn, and so I'm still conflicted at this moment to what we need to be doing, but I also understand that the impact that it's had on economic development in the Northern Range and our sit-down restaurants and the diversity of our commercial spaces. So we shall see where we go. Thank you.
All right. Seeing no other comments, I'll ask for the title.
Ordinance 2131, an ordinance amending Section 8-1104 of the Commerce City Revised Municipal Code to eliminate state-imposed distance restrictions.
Thank you. I'll ask for a roll call vote. For the record, 5 in favor, 1 opposed, 3 excused absences. Motion is carried. Moving on to ordinance 2132. Does council have any questions regarding this ordinance? Seeing none, is there anyone in the audience who would like to come forward and address the council on this ordinance? Seeing none, I'm open for a motion and a second to introduce ordinance 2132 by council as seated. Mr. Bullock.
Move to introduce ordinance 2132. Council is seated on first reading.
Thank you. Mr. Amador.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Will the city attorney please read the title?
Ordinance 2132, an ordinance amending the 2017 budget of the City of Commerce City, Colorado by the recognition of the Adams County Open Space Grant Funds in the amount of $50,000 for the Veterans Memorial Park Master Plan and the authorization of the expenditure thereof.
Thank you. I ask for a roll call vote. For the record, motion is carried. 6 in favor, 3 excused absences. Moving on to ordinance 2136. Does council have questions regarding this ordinance? Seeing none, is there anyone in the audience who would like to come forward and address the council on ordinance 2136? Seeing none, I'm open for a motion. Mr. McEldowney.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move to approve, or introduce rather, ordinance 2136 on first reading. Council is seated.
Thank you. Mr. Amador?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Will the city attorney please read the title?
Ordinance 2136, an ordinance amending the 2017 budget of the City of Commerce City, Colorado by appropriating a portion of the unencumbered fund balance of the Commerce City Brighton School District Use Tax Fund, CCBSD, close parens, in the amount of $200,000 for half the cost to upgrade the natural surface playfield located at Reunion Elementary and authorizing the expenditure thereof.
Thank you. I'm open for a roll call vote.
Mr. McEldowney? Mr. Teeter?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was waiting for a second for some reason.
Motion carried. 6 in favor, 3 excused absences. We'll move on to ordinance 2135. Does council have any questions regarding this ordinance? Seeing none, is there anyone in the audience who would like to come forward and address the council on this ordinance? Seeing no one, I'm open for a motion to introduce the ordinance. Mr. Bullock.
Move to introduce ordinance 2135. Council is seated on first reading.
Thank you. Mr. Teeter.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Will the city attorney please read the title?
Ordinance 2135, an ordinance amending the 2017 budget of the City of Commerce City, Colorado by the recognition of the Colorado Department of Transportation grant in the amount of $9,000 for DUI enforcement efforts and the authorization of the expenditure thereof.
All right, I'll ask for a roll call vote. Andrew.
Ms. Carson?
Katie.
Thank you.
Motion is carried. 6 in favor, 3 excused absences. All right, ordinance 2137. I'm going to ask Councilman Amador if he'd like to make some remarks on this ordinance as he made the motion to request this ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On ordinance 2137, in order to preserve the diversity of our commercial retail spaces in the city and understanding what the ordinance of what our existing ordinance concerning retail marijuana is with a zero setback from business to business or lot to lot, if you will. I think it's important to note that after multiple study sessions that we've gone down and looked at where and the density of retail could happen, also understanding that we get multiple requests as a city council to rezone specific properties, which continually changes our zoning map from when we initially started the setback of 1,000 foot from retail to retail. If I recall, when we first started the regulation of what retail marijuana looked like, we did not, or actually we did have a 1,000 foot setback from retail to retail. Through presentations, we've learned and we understand more about where the retail locations can happen within the city, both in the core city and the Northern Range. So I feel it's appropriate at this moment to amend our ordinance for retail marijuana with 1,000 foot setback, along with, and I'm going to introduce this with a cap of 4 retail businesses within the zoning or within the wards as we know them today. So,
all right. I'm going to ask council if they have any questions regarding this ordinance to get started. Mr. McElveen.
Given the fact that this request for this amendment occurred when I was out of the country and not able to participate in that discussion, though I'm confident I made my feelings clear in the study sessions, it seems as if there was some, dare I say, opportunism in terms of the conversation when it came up and the limited number of folks that were able to participate. And I think Mr. Bullock was also unable to participate in that conversation. We have 3 members of council absent tonight. I'm concerned about progressing this discussion without the full body of the council here, given the diversity of comments I've heard from this council. So less a question, more a comment. I know you're not looking for a motion yet, but I would be interested in making a motion to continue this conversation if that is possible.
Let me see what the rest of the council has to say, being that this is an ordinance brought forward by Mr. Amador. I did ask Mr. Amador. He said he wanted to proceed, but I want to know how the rest of the council feels about it before we do proceed. Mr. Bullock.
I'm of the same mind of Mr. McAdowney, and due to the fact that in Mr. Amador asking to proceed, he is not only asking for the separation, but for a cap, which I don't think was in this original ordinance. I would also like to have a continuation of this ordinance until we have a full council that can sit and actually speak on this, because I wasn't here when the 1,000-foot separation was here, and if I'd have been here, I would have asked for a cap plus the separation. So I would love for a continuation too. So if the council is amenable to that, I would say that we continue this till we have a full council that can hear this, or at least more than we have now.
Councilwoman Carson.
I didn't have any questions. I did have a few comments, so I can hold them if you want me to.
Yeah,
Mayor.
please. You know, after having the introduction and having Andrew state that he now wants to consider caps as well, I would be the first one to say that I think it's important that the council have yet one more study session to discuss what caps would mean to this industry, to our community, and how that would affect with what we did with the setback. I've been a proponent of trying to take some kind of action so that we don't impact all of our commercial opportunities and have marijuana facilities on every corner. However, I would rather take the time to do it right than to, and to have the rest of my council available to offer up opportunities. So my recommendation would be go back to a study session and talk about, have staff bring us some relatively decent information on caps as well as setbacks. Councilman McEldowney, you have something to add?
Yeah, just to add, and I'm not sure that it's present in the ordinance based on my review. I think it's also important for us to be able to understand at the point that this is formally considered and voted on what the implications are to any businesses that are currently in the pipeline relative to monies outlaid, staff time. Are we disrespecting the process through which they have progressed and the monies that they have outlaid? So I think it's important that we have the ability to be very clear about the implications around any aspect of this decision, but most importantly, those folks that are already in the process and how they will be respected accordingly.
All right. Seeing no more discussion before I go on with this ordinance, I want to go back to Mr. Amador. Do you still wishing to proceed? Because there's members of this council that may make a motion to continue it, and I want you to be okay with that.
Hearing the discussion, I'm amenable to a continuance when more council members are here.
Okay. Do we have a date, Mr. Attorney, that this would be continued to?
Depending how the council wanted to proceed, whether it was to continue it to the next regular council meeting would be July 17th. If there was desire to discuss it as a study session, a motion to refer it to the study session on July 10th, the city manager tells me would be the best agenda for that. So those are two options. With the addition of the cap discussion, I would want further direction from council on what that language would look like so that an ordinance could be prepared or an amendment the next time. So depending whether you want to continue it to the 17th, to the regular meeting, or refer it to the study session on the 10th, that would be appropriate motions.
Mr. Amador?
Motion to present a study session July 10th to further discuss the ordinance.
Okay. Mr. McEldowney?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to continue ordinance 2137, refer it back to study session for more information and more discussion for July 10th. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion is carried. So we will discuss that on the 10th of July. Now we're moving into our presentation portion of the meeting. I would ask Public Works Director Maria DeAndrea to give us that presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm actually going to co-present the information tonight with Alan Trudell, our Development Inspector, who is our point person in dealing with United Power and Xcel Energy on our street lighting issues. This came up as a council request a few months ago in a study session, just to get a little bit of more information on how we work with both United Power and Xcel Energy on our street lighting, basically maintenance, new installations, that sort of thing. And it is a relatively large program. We have just under 3,900 streetlights within the city, owned roughly half by United Power and half by Xcel Energy. And then we're responsible for all that maintenance and coordination with those utilities. So tonight we're just going to give you that brief overview of the program, talk about kind of how those two companies respond to outages, how to report outages for the benefit of the public, and then how we go about establishing new installations and new developments, for example, what our spacing standards are, and then talk about Excel's program to convert some of the existing lights to new light-emitting diodes or LED lights, and then our ongoing coordination efforts. So with that, just a point of interest, Commerce City does not own or maintain the majority of streetlights within the city. So again, those 3,900 streetlights that are within the majority of the city are actually owned by either Excel Energy, and that's generally the areas south of 96th Avenue, kind of more of the core city. And then United Power owns everything north of 96th Avenue and then east to this, out to the airport area. And again, Excel Energy has just under 19 or just over 1,900 streetlights, and United Power has about 1,965 at last count. And then obviously, as each new development comes in, we're adding more and more streetlights every time. We do manage each of those companies through a franchise agreement that's in place. And so that talks about how much do they charge us for maintenance, how much do they charge us for the electrical usage, and then who and what goes about in terms of installation and repairs. So the city does pay for all of the electricity costs. We also pay a monthly fee for each of those streetlights, which covers routine maintenance. So if a bulb is burnt out, something else has been caused for just wear and tear, that is covered by that monthly cost. If it happens to be knocked down, that cost is an additional cost to the city, but United Power or Excel would send out their own crews to do that type of thing. So with that, hand it over here to Alan to talk a little bit more about some of the details.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. Good evening. The types of streetlights that we have, in the subdivisions are Cobra heads, curvilinear luminaires, or in layman's terms, hockey puck type. We have archetype and various other styles in the city. Residential streets, the installation methods. We have fiberglass poles, which are direct bury. We have steel poles, which are mounted on a concrete base with breakaways. And the collector and arterial streets also have steel poles with breakaways, and we have wood poles. I have a few examples on the next slide here. This is a typical Cobra head streetlight. This is a hockey puck style. And this is a ornamental residential light. The maintenance levels of service by Excel Energy, the repairs can take up to 5 working days. United Power, their repairs can take up to 10 working days. There are yearly night checks performed by each company to identify outages, and the city often receives notice of burned out or damaged lights. And most citizens think that the city is responsible for maintenance, which we are not. We receive a lot of those through the Citizen Relationship Management Program, or CRM. The resident can go to United Power's website or Excel Energy's website and click on Contact Us. They can scroll down under Streetlight Repairs. There's an identification number on each pole. They can enter that information and report them themselves. During our daily rounds of going through subdivisions back and forth, all the streetlights that are on during the day, we collect those numbers and then we report those to Excel Energy ourselves. So I've got quite a list of those. The replacement costs, I've got some numbers here for 2015, 2016, and 17. And the average cost, $1,500 to $2,000 for the in-ground poles, the residential lighting, the steel lighting poles that you see out on Quebec Parkway, up on 104th, up in the northern range. Those can get pretty pricey depending on how many components you have to replace on a street light. Those can run up to $5,000, $5,600. Decorative poles have more of a lead time, and we have a expenditure of $60,000 to $130,000 per year. As I mentioned before, the reporting the outages included the Xcel Energy website and United Power website with contact numbers, and also a Public Works Department number if they want to report a problem, or if citizens want to report a problem. The identification numbers are there on your right. This is an Xcel pole, and they'll come out and tag the pole with a work order number, and they'll get it taken care of. And we do keep an eye on that to see that time frame, to see that they're getting them turned around the way they're supposed to. Some more examples. Damage can happen anytime, anywhere during the year. Centered either in the summer or the winter. People back into our streetlights. These are up on Tower Road, just south of 104th Avenue, which are some decorative lights. And in this photo, I had that street light on the south end repaired the previous day. And a driver, after it was repaired, came through, hit that one, missed the center one, and hit the one closest to you. So when that happens, there's an accident report. We get a case number, and then we refer that to that damage and repair to their insurance company. So the responsible driver does have to pay for that cost, so the city doesn't incur that cost. Here's another example of we had somebody racing on a street, and you can see the skid marks there in the background that they knocked over this street light. This is an Xcel pole over off of Hines Way in just about 96th. This is Highway 2 in the wintertime. You know, before we started our construction, the Highway 2 was CDOT maintenance. So this is an older photo when maintenance was CDOT's, and you can see the vehicle sitting there. They towed the other two. There was another couple cars in that one, but they towed those off. So yeah. Here's another one up in the northern range that the tree lawn was being landscaped, and the landscapers backed into it. So Shea Homes had to pick up that cost for that one. People driving too fast. This is a concrete truck. This happened about 6:30 at night. And this is 104th Avenue and Joliet Street. And he went around the corner too fast going south and rolled over. He was empty, but he took the corner too fast and hit our street light there. That street light was about $5,600 to replace. So our city lighting standards, our arterials and collector streets, lights are spaced at a minimum of 300 feet on alternating sides of the street, 2 lights at each intersection, and often the lights are spaced more closely based on a photometric analysis. The residential streets, lights spaced at a minimum 300 feet on alternating sides, 1 light at each intersection. And developers are responsible for designing and working with United Power and Xcel to install new streetlights per the approved construction plans. And I'm going to hand it off to Maria here.
Okay. Thank you, Alan. So as Alan mentioned, we do try and go back whenever we have some of that damage. We do work through the police department to attempt to recover those costs, but we do see still a significant dollar amount that's the city ends up being responsible for any of those knockdowns. One of the issues that we've had, and which led to a lot of our discussion through the Tower Road and Highway 2 project, was just the time it took for both Xcel and United Power to respond when one of those decorative lights was knocked over on Highway 2, which was the reason we went to the decorative lights that are now going to be owned and maintained by the city. So they're seeing them start to go up on Tower Road. Those are LED lights, so we will see a lower maintenance cost for those, or electrical cost. But then we will be responsible for that maintenance ongoing, and we'll establish a contract to actually go out. We have ordered some spares, so we have spares. They're the exact same light pole for both Tower and Highway 2, and we'll have some spares in our yard up at the MSC in order to make that response more quickly. But Xcel has come up with a program to start to consider changing all of the Cobra headlights in their jurisdictions over to LEDs. And they've laid out 3 options that each city could consider. In summary, basically, option A is where they pay all the upfront costs, and then we would get a savings over time at a little bit lesser rate than if we, with option B, the city would have to put up all the upfront costs and then get a slightly larger savings over time. And then option C, we would not have to do that. We would just opt out. We've looked at the return on investment, or that payback period, and it would be about 12 years if we went with option B. So we'd have to upfront roughly just under $500,000 with a 12-year payback. So we're recommending going with option A, where United Power, or Xcel Energy would upfront the costs and then convert those Cobra heads over to LED lights over time. It has been a very popular program. They've offered this to all the other cities within the Denver metro area, and so they anticipate about a 5-year time frame to change out all these lights. So it's not like it's going to happen overnight, but we do think that that's a good idea for both the community. They're a little bit brighter, a little bit whiter, more clear out there, more similar to natural sunlight. And again, obviously that maintenance lowers the maintenance cost, lowers the energy cost for the city that we actually end up paying in the long run. So with that, I'll have Alan wrap it up in terms of how we coordinate on an ongoing basis.
So we perform checks on a periodic basis for streetlight outages. Like you said, streetlights that are on during the day, we get those as we drive our routes. We coordinate with utility contractors in the field to discuss any installation or repair issues. We contact the utilities on a regular basis about their installation. We do quarterly meetings to discuss upcoming projects and development plans. Any questions?
Council have any questions for the Public Works team? Councilman Carson?
Can you tell me with the LED light bulbs, how long will it take for the city to break even?
For the new ones that we're purchasing or are installing?
Yeah.
I believe we did I'd have to double check, but I want to say it was a 5-year payback period of us owning and maintaining them versus going with the United Power light out on either of those routes. But I'll have to verify that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Teeter?
Thanks for your presentation tonight. Alan, there's a street light in front of my house that is on 24/7. After reading this presentation, I did go over and look at the numbers on the pole, and there was 2 sets of numbers, one on one side and one on the side. So I don't know which number it was going to be. I haven't called it in yet, but if you would like to do that duty for me, I'm more than welcome that you do it.
I would certainly do that.
But yeah, it's open 24/7. And also, Mr. Smith, this is something you can talk to Mr. Beerwilder with from the fire department. I know there's times when they're on scene, and if they should know, they should get that license plate number from these people that hit those poles. Sometimes the police don't even show up on some of that stuff, and the fire department's there. We can make a request to them to, I see we're paying for it, we make a request to them that they get that license plate number for us, and we can pass that on. Thank you.
Mr. McEldowney?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Maria and team. The slide that talks about the annual cost in terms of $60,000 to $130,000 per year in terms of replacement, what proportion of that are we, that's my understanding would be the total. What amount of that are we actually seeing recovered through the pursuit of these claims? I'm just trying to get a sense of out of pocket versus.
I don't have that number, but I can certainly get that information for you.
Okay.
I would say it's fairly minimal that we're recovering.
To me, that becomes one of those areas where it's a metric that I think would be helpful for us to look at in terms of periodically understanding if we're trending high or low. I think to Mr. Teeter's example, what are the situations that ideally, I mean, to me, anytime somebody hits a pole, it's on them, right? Now, certainly we have an unfortunate number of people in the community that are not driving with insurance, and so that makes things difficult. But certainly I would think any commercial vehicle that hits it, or any time an individual has insurance, we should be recouping the cost of that pole. So to me, in tracking this and understanding what proportion we are or are not recovering would help us to develop strategies to elevate that recovery frequency. The other thing, I know we talked about city-owned, Xcel-owned, and United Power-owned, but don't we also have some instances of HOA poles as another category? For some reason, I feel like in Reunion, as an example, there are some poles that are not like a United Power pole.
That's correct. We do have poles that are city-owned, that have a city stamp on them, that are metered. We have some up on 104th Revere Street, Kittredge Street. They're in the median pork chop islands. And those we pay for and we maintain those. HOA.
I'll use an example. So South Lawn Park. There are streetlights that ring South Lawn Park that, if my memory serves, that label actually says HOA and then has a numeric value?
You are correct.
Okay. And so the thing that I've tried to educate folks on is, well, if you see one that says HOA on it, then you need to contact the Metro District /HOA to talk about that issue. And so I assume that there are potentially other neighborhoods, more than likely in the Northern Range, where we have more Metro District /HOA situations where that may also be the case.
Yes.
The key is it's a confusion for everybody on who to report these to. I often use the analogy with folks that every time you drive by a streetlight that's out and you assume somebody else is going to call it in, the odds are nobody else has called it in. So if you see it, then you should call it in and report it. And if you are in doubt about who to contact, I suggest that they use the Ask C3 app for ease. So I know that puts an extra step on in your plate to deal with, but to me, we see too many lights, and oftentimes I'll see them and leave them, right? And just see if, just for observation's sake, how long do they stay out? Testing, in my mind, is somebody else reporting this, and my sense is, by and large, people aren't reporting it. So I think this report is very helpful. I think it would be great to include a piece in our city news about light poles and the light pole 101 in terms of identification of who to call, or at least some rough criteria that if you live north of 96, odds are it's a United Power pole, but when in doubt, whatever we feel is a supportable procedure, right? Do we want to just tell them to do an Ask C3 and then we try and take care of it, which would put it on our radar, which would help us then better track responsiveness of the utilities? I will sort of defer to staff on some of the logistics there, but I guess to me it might make sense, at least for a period of time, to see staff act as a bit of a clearinghouse on these, given that we've seen inconsistencies in how quickly these have been resolved by either utility or otherwise. But yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, it's, the completion dates are like 7 to 10 days. Typically, a citizen calls in, I educate them on a time frame. I do give United Power or Xcel Energy their information in the CRM system, so Xcel and United Power contact them directly.
That's great.
So that they know we did our job.
That's great.
And I explain to them the process, and if there's a problem, they call me back.
Okay.
And those get dealt with turnaround time is a day for us.
So can I take that as a you're okay if we do what I've described and have folks work through you to get to United Power or get to Public Service as opposed to trying to find a way to contact them directly? Is that
Yeah,
fair?
I think we've gotten better results from both of them by us being that liaison.
Okay.
Because they know that we're watching, they know that we're monitoring those, and so I think we've been getting better response. While they say 5 days for Excel, 10 for United Power, we know that keeping on them and making sure that they're aware has helped us try and meet those criteria in a
Okay.
better, more timely sense.
And I guess that I'll just add that when we think about the number of lights that we'll be adding on Tower and Highway 2 that are under our control, and potentially 96th over time or wherever else, I think trying to teach citizens down to the level of who to call in those circumstances, it just, yeah, if we can be comfortable in pointing them to Ask C3, that would be great for you to help support that. In terms of the LED pole conversion, do we know what style light they're going with? Is that something that we get to help influence, or do they have a light style picked out, or?
There's no choice. It's a Cobra head again, stainless steel, with just, so it would look very similar with just an LED light in it, but the whole armature would have to be traded out.
So they're essentially keeping the pole and the infrastructure and swapping out
The arm
Yeah.
and the luminaire itself.
Yep. Okay.
Mr. Amador.
I think that last part of the discussion of what they're changing out actually is kind of sparking where I'm going. On slide 21, the Excel Energy LED conversion. Right there. So Excel Energy offering a program to convert bulbs in the Cobra head. So is it just the bulb, or is it the bulb, the ballast, and the arm? I guess when I see bulb, just...
Yeah, so it is the entire, I think what they're finding is that it's just easier to replace the whole armature as it comes off the pole than to try and fiddle around with the light, the fixture, and the ballast in there. And so to have a long-wearing bulb that has a bad ballast. So I think they've experienced already, and they're starting to do these conversions, that it's just easier to take the arm, take everything off, and put new in.
Right, and then so we look at option, that's a great clarification. So option A, under the first two bullet points, I think I need a clarification on what, I'm going to call it a percentage of existing qualified streetlights is versus the second bullet, which says eligible streetlights. So I guess I'm confused on what is existing and qualified versus eligible. So I guess maybe what's not eligible.
Sure. So this program only applies to any Cobra headlights. Okay. So the ones that are a hockey puck or any of those other decorative styles would not be applicable under this program. So I would say that the majority, especially in the core city, are the Cobra head styles, and then the city must convert at least 90% of those. So they want to come in, do a full, not just pick ones off here and there, and really go in and try and do a full area of just the Cobra head. So that's what's the definition of eligible streetlights.
That's helpful, because I was just confused on existing qualified, and I'm thinking in my mind, yeah, but aren't they all similar to that as you drive around the city versus... Thank you.
All right, seeing no more questions, I want to thank you both for coming in. I do agree with Councilman McEldowney that something in our neighborhood news about just how streetlights work, that we don't own and maintain the majority of them. Here's a number to call, and try to help educate some of our public as to what to do when they see a streetlight on all day or one that's not working at night. Will be helpful. But thank you for the program. Appreciate you coming in tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, administrative business. Is there any administrative council business this evening? Seeing none. We're going to go into reports. Mr. McBroom.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We did distribute via email tonight's edition of the city manager update. We do have a couple of updates on action items that Mr. Douglas brought forward. Also, an update on the Quality Community Foundation Golf Tournament, which was much more successful than it was last year, thanks to the efforts of a bunch of community organizations. Then we've also attached the monthly capital improvement program update and some correspondence from BNSF. As always, reach out if you have any questions.
Great, thank you. Mr. Sheasley.
Thank you, Mayor Ford. I just wanted to call your attention to an update on some pending litigation I sent this morning. But other than that, I have nothing else to report.
That's it, huh? Good news from the attorney today and nothing else.
Good news.
I like it that way. All right. So we had Rotary, neighborhood outreach. The neighborhood outreach, I want to thank everybody that showed up from the community, but I really want to thank all of the staff that helped set everything up, cook all the food. It happened to end up being a very nice evening. Seemed like there was a lot of good camaraderie with our residents. Everybody seemed to have a good time. And, you know, for one of these times where it's the first one of the year and you show up, a lot of times that's the time when residents will show up to try to find and pick out the mayor or the council members to give you their 2 cents about concerns they're having. And I think it's the first time I've been to a community outreach and had people just walk up to say hello, and I did not receive one single complaint at that outreach, which totally shocked me because there was a lot of people there. And it just seemed like everybody was in a good mood. Everybody was enjoying the music, enjoying the food. I think Alan was over there cooking. Usually you are. I know there was a lot of staff, but it went off without a hitch, and I think it's probably one of the best neighborhood outreaches I have attended in all the years that we've been doing it. So thanks to the staff. We had the Rotary Trap Shoot, which went very well, and all the money raised by Rotary will go to scholarships and to our Heart and Soul program that we do. I did go over, one of the things that I enjoy doing every year is going over to the stadium and doing a little clip of a video for before the 4th of July when the game's getting ready to kick off. We go down on the field and we throw out some T-shirts and stuff, and they have a little clip of the mayor welcoming everybody to the city. And it kind of is my piece, like Mayor Hancock does on the train at the airport. Welcome to Denver. So I get to say welcome to Commerce City once a year, and I did get to do that last week. Again, Rotary, I need to thank the Mayor Pro Tem for covering for me. Last Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I was out of town at a bow fishing tournament, which my team took second place, which I'm proud of them. And then, most importantly tonight, I want to say happy birthday to Councilman Rick Teeter.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Rick.
Thank you, thank you.
And I'm going to get him out of here early enough. He can go and enjoy an adult beverage this evening for his birthday. So if there be no further business to come before this council, Mr. Teeter, you're burning time.
I know it. I want to acknowledge Public Works staff. I went to the open house Thursday night.
Yes.
And it was, in my opinion, it was a great success. The staff did a great job. There was people working everywhere, making people happy. There was a lot of door prizes. There was a lot of things for people to see and do. There was, some giveaways for the hot dogs and the popcorn and different things. And just observing between last year and this year, early on, I was there about 4:30 both years, and this year was a lot more people involved this year. And I just think that I know that staff did a great job over there in that area in that open house. And thank you.
Just a second, Mr. Bullock. We'll go with Mr. McEldowney now.
Actually, I'll keep my comment for later.
Okay, Mr. Amador.
Understanding that a majority of us will be at the CML conference, do we need to appoint someone to be the acting mayor? Well, you and
Who's
the mayor
not
pro tem?
going, Mr. Amador?
Jason McEldowney.
Jason, you're the mayor. Tomorrow through Friday. I'll take back over on Saturday. So to the residents that are out there listening at home, if you have complaints, this week is the week to turn those in. Thanks, Jason. Mr. Bullock.
I want to echo Mr. Teeter's remarks on the touch a vehicle over at Public Works. That was a very fun event. I started off my dinner with popcorn and a snow cone and then finished up with hot dogs. So I really enjoyed that event. And as he said, there was staff everywhere to inform you about anything you wanted to know about any of the equipment that was out there. And if you really wanted to dress up like a policeman, you got to put on the bulletproof vest and the rifle and everything. So some people they didn't let do that.
I bet they didn't let you do that, huh?
No, they didn't let me do
I
that.
didn't think they would. All right. Now, is everybody good with everything? If there be no further business to come before this city council this evening, we are adjourned. Have a nice evening, everyone.
Thank you.
2 in a row, that's right.